Okay, cool. I am recording now. Let me go ahead and share screen. So once again, this is a demo that, unlike the early parts of the semester, you do not have to submit this. You can follow along and stop me whenever you get stuck, or you can just watch. It's up to you. But the idea is that I'm going to show you some stuff, and then you implement it into your own project. So what I was saying at the beginning of class is that I'm going to be redoing the second demo that we did on Friday because that was messy. And I think that, well, when things get messy like that, I think they get confusing for students and for the class. So I won't redo the whole gallery thing. I think that part of it went okay, but the second part of it kind of crumbled and fell to bits. So I'm going to do that. Again, I'll change a couple of things here and there because now I'm starting to think ahead in terms of like being able to grab user input and have that stored in variables that may change and update as the user inputs more information, right? So I'm starting to think about what those bits of information will be stored in, and can I pull those out of like a larger string that I've been typing in manually so far in order to get those isolated so that they can be, well, so that they can be filled with data. So, but that's not going to be a whole lot different. And then I'll probably go a little bit further in terms of getting just a little bit of CSS in, not much. Let's see, so I'm in my workspace here, and I've created a resources subfolder just right inside workspace here, just to contain some of the stuff that I know I'm going to be wanting, that skeleton.css. I'm going to want to get that in there once I finish, creating the scaffolding. And then my news API key, so I don't have to hunt for it. In fact, I've got it open here in my Notepad++, so I can just grab that whenever I need it. And I've deleted the lose news project folder. I kept the other one and renamed it Gallery Demo, so if anybody needs to see that again, then I'll be happy to show them. But the other one I deleted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a right-click inside of this workspace folder and open up a terminal. And some people were saying, I think last time, that they didn't have that option. So, but I think if you go, I think that's because I've got the PowerShell thing. And if you don't have that, if you just right-click and go to Show More Options, then it should show you the open terminal there. So one way or the other, you should be able to access this that way. And do let me know if you can't, because that's going to be kind of critical. Okay, so here we are in the workspace, and I'm going to do the npm create and vite at latest, which will create the scaffolding using the most recent stable version of vite, and hit enter. npm, we'll learn more about npm next semester when we do Node. npm is just Node Package Manager. And it's one of the things that's nice about it is it seems to work equally well and kind of seamlessly between Mac and Windows. So if you've got a team of people working on a Mac and like one front-end designer working on, or like a bunch of people on Windows and one front-end designer working on Mac, then it's not going to be a big problem getting everybody on the same page. Okay, so this is going to be lose news, like so. So the project name you put in, hit enter, select a framework. We're using Vue, so you want to select that one. And then make sure that you select JavaScript again. TypeScript is a stricter version of JavaScript, and if you don't know how to use it, then it can move through all kinds of errors everywhere. Stuff that works fine in native JavaScript will not necessarily work in TypeScript. Okay, so that creates part of the scaffolding. If I go and check it out, I've got my folder there, and it's got some stuff in here now, but it doesn't have everything. This is the readme.md file that I was talking about. We'll take a look at that at some point. And then I just go ahead and follow these last two instructions. cd change directory into the new directory that we just created. And then npm install will get the rest of it, which will install all of the Node modules that this needs in order to run. And you don't really have to worry about all of them for now. Just go ahead and let it do its thing. You need them, but you don't need to worry about them. Okay, so we have done the change directory, we've done the npm install. I'm going to do the npm run dev. And it will give me a port number after a moment. There it is, 5173. And let's see, I do not have it open. Oh yeah, I do, here it is. So I'm going to do localhost 5173, there it is. And just make sure things are working by tapping on this a few times. It's incrementing, booyah, everything's happy. So now is the point, so we've got the scaffolding in place. So that's all you need to do for that. It takes a couple of minutes, but in terms of us like doing the actual hard coding, it really doesn't take any work at all, right? It's already done. So your next job is to open up view.app and start messing with stuff. Start changing it so that it's your own. And so let's go ahead and do that. Let's see, here we are, and here we're going to go into source. By the way, this is the readme.md. It's a markdown file. I don't know how many of you are familiar with markdown, but let's see. No, just a second here. Here we go. So this is what I use. This is the language that I use to write almost all of my content. I've written entire books using Markdown. So we're not going to go over it here. We may go over it more next semester, but it's just a way of generating HTML really easily and quickly. So like this is an H1, this is a paragraph, this is a link here, this is an H2, this is a bullet point for a list item. And these are links. So if I go over here and preview this, then it shows up as HTML over here. It's just rendering through that, parsing through it. So you can put, this is all like Vue plus Vite stuff. You can delete all this stuff and put your own stuff into the README file. And that's what you should do if you've got some functionality that you add to your project that you're not sure whether or not it's perfectly clear to me what it is. And it needs to be perfectly clear so I can grade it, then you put it in the README right here. So that's it. So I'll go ahead and close that. I just wanted to show you guys that real quick. Okay, next up, let's go into source here. I always want to go into public, but it's in source. And this is where some of the main files that we're going to be using are. There's the app.vue, the main.js, the style.css. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and go into that resources subfolder that I was telling you about, and I'm going to grab the skeleton.css and copy it and put it into the source folder, because I noticed that there's some other CSS in here, so it seems like a decent place for it. And then what I can do is I can open up app.vue, so I'm going to do that in VS Code here. I'm actually going to go to File and Open Folder, and make sure that's the same lose news because there was a different one before. And let's see, so we're going to source, so I guess it would make sense to just select the root directory here, so I'm going to select that. No, I don't need to say that. All right, so here's all the stuff. So most of the stuff we don't even have to mess around with. I'm just going to pop open the source here and then open up app.vue or app.vue and give it a second. Give me the color coding and then all of this stuff. Would you please go away? So this is like their stuff, right? This is all the Vite stuff, which shows up here when you open up to test in the browser. I'm just going to delete all this stuff here. I don't need any of that stuff. I don't need to be showing my users, oh yes, you used Vite for this. And then make sure you get rid of the setup attribute on script as well. And then all this stuff that's inside template, just delete it, gone. And all the stuff in here, you can get rid of that stuff too, unless you really like how this is looking here, but I'm just going to get rid of that. I was thinking about the style scoped. I've been kind of making a deal like, oh yeah, make sure that you leave the scoped on here. And it's good that you know what it is, but I mean, it actually doesn't matter for our purposes because we're doing just a single page. So the style is kind of scoped automatically. There's nowhere else for it to go. So you can leave it on there or leave it off of there, however you prefer. I just noticed that when you leave it on there, that Vue will be throwing some very strange looking class names or v app names onto like looped elements and so on. Maybe we'll leave it on there, and then when we check it out in the console and take a look, if we start getting irritated with how much boilerplate it's adding, then we can take that scoped attribute off if we want to. But for now, I'm going to leave things just like this, and when I go over to the browser, everything's gone. There's nothing on there anymore except some very basic HTML boilerplate. So this is actually how you want it to look when you start. And I'm going to pop up to the script and just put some stuff in here right off the bat. So this is like, when we first did, I guess it was just a week ago. It seems like longer than that. When we first got introduced to Vue, we had to do like, const app equals view.createApp and put all that stuff. But if we're doing the the SFC files like this one, single file components, we don't need to do all that stuff. We just do export default. And that's a JavaScript modules thing, export default. This is where you can export functions from one JavaScript file to another using import, but we don't need to use import for here. And then just the stuff that we would put under the app or view.createApp, we'll put inside of here. So like there's data, and then recall this, how this is set up. There's the data, and then you have to return an object like this. So you just go ahead and build that logic structure right off the bat. And then I'm going to put a comma because this is one big object that's getting exported. And then the next one is going to be mounted. Like so. So mounted is the stuff that if you put it in here, it will wait until the page has loaded completely and the Vue instance has been mounted onto the HTML in the browser, and then it will fire off whatever is inside of here. So on Friday, we put the fetch call inside mounted, so it would load the whole page and then it would do that fetch call. So that's what we do. I'm going to add another one here. We're not going to use it tonight, but I will use it on the recording that I do tomorrow. When we want to grab input from the user, generally speaking, you want to have some function firing. So when they tap on a link, or when they, in my case, when they enter in, text into a search field and then hit the button, then I want some kind of function firing. And so when you do that, there's going to be methods here. And so it's going to be all three of those. But again, I'll leave methods alone for right now. We'll just do data and mounted just like we did on Friday. And inside data here, so any questions so far? This is kind of like stuff we've done before. This is repeating. But if there is a question, please let me know. Okay, cool. So what we did before, we only put one thing in here. We did articles. Oops. And I put an empty object literal in here. I said, okay, so whenever we grab the articles from News API and fetch them, I'm going to take that data and I'm going to fill this object with that data. So it was like newsapi.articles, or whether this.articles equals newsapi.articles, or whatever it was. I realized that afterwards that it actually makes more sense for this to be an array, because an array is that's the format that the data comes in from News API. It comes in, it's an object, but it's just one name, articles, and then the value for that articles is a big array. So I'm going to start this out as an array instead of an object here. Just leave it empty and we'll populate it with the fetch call. But I'm going to add some other stuff in here this time. And this is to do that big concatenated thing we did in the fetch call. So I'm going to do something called query and leave that as an empty string literal, just like articles is an empty array literal. And this is going to be, well, for now we'll fill it in, but eventually this is going to be storing the user input. It's going to be inside this query guy right here. And then I will do API key. And then within that string, this is where I need to grab my API key here, copy it, and paste it in. And of course, you will have a different API key for use. There's other things you could put, like you could put in all the parameters that you're planning on using. For instance, News API has a page size. So if you wanted to limit your results to like 15 results or something like that, I could do like page size equals 10 or page size 10 right here in the object if I wanted to. But I'll go ahead and leave it at this for right now. And now I'm going to go into mounted. So again, this is the stuff that fires once the page is loaded and the instance has been mounted onto it. And this is going to be our fetch call here. So fetch, this is where we put in the data endpoint. So this is http://news api.org/ and this is one of the things I was forgetting last time, /v2, version 2, it's got to be in there. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in everything and then question mark q equals. So this is what I was playing around with before. There's different things that you can do in here. Like the first one that I did like country equals US. And then there's like a way to limit the date that it returns and so on. But if you want the user to be able to enter in like any like news category, like sports or weather or whatever, then this is the one that you use. So it's returning everything, but then Q equals means this is going to be a query. And the thing that's going to go in here is the query. And for now, like I said, we're going to be hard coding it. But later on, it will be stuff that the user enters. So I'm going to put this on several lines just because it gets kind of long. So we're just going to do concatenation here. I always want to do this. I would say, oh, well, query, okay, so I'm just going to, this is a variable. I can use the variable right here, but you need to use the this namespace. This is, but this references whatever current object or function we're in, basically, as long as scope has been set, which you don't worry about that yet. So basically, if you want to refer to anything that's in here, you have to preface it with this dot, because query is a property of the object that's getting returned here. So this is actually referencing this returned object here. So this dot query is what you need to use in order to grab that. And right now, like I said, it's just an empty string. We'll fix that later. So plus this dot query and then plus and API key equals. Notice the difference here. API key is all lowercase because it's part of a string parameter, but JavaScript here I'm using camel case and capitalizing the K, so it's important to just remember the difference if you're doing it. If you want to do it all lowercase to remember it, that's fine, but having done this, I'm talking about it because I know that this is a place where I could very easily make a mistake and forget to capitalize the K when I'm calling in the JavaScript identifier here instead of the string parameter. Okay, so API key equals, that's a string, one more concatenation here, and again, this is something I want to be able to do, but it's not. It's this dot API key. You got to have that in there, and that should do it. Maybe if you can read these one after another, you can kind of mentally assemble what this whole string is going to look like. This is the data endpoint, and we're looking for everything, but narrowing it down with a query, like for sports or weather or whatever, and that's this guy. And then remember the ampersand is used when you're stringing a couple of different parameters together. First one's always, not always, but usually follows a question mark, and then later on they're separated by the ampersands. API key equals, and then this dot API key is this guy right here. So this should be enough. If I've done this wrong, even though we don't have anything, this should be enough to generate an error if I made a mistake. So I'm going to pop over to the browser, and let's see. 400, let's see what it's telling me here. Question equals, oh, that's all it is. It's just that I haven't entered any data into the query. So let's throw a query in and let's see what happens. So I think I started with sports. So let me do a save there and refresh over here. Yeah, that was it. So that was the error. It says, hey, I couldn't find anything but that's because the query was empty. So we put something in there, boom, we're good to go. So I'll leave that in there for right now, and then later on we'll try other stuff like technology and weather, and all of a sudden I can't think of what other news categories there are, but I'm sure we'll think of something. Okay, so it is time to build our HTML template here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a header, maybe. And inside there, I'm going to put an H1. Is that a question?
No, I was just mentioning that I was joining late.
Okay, cool. Welcome. I'm just, you can follow along, but it's optional if you want to. I'm repeating the second demo from Friday. And I think it'll go a little bit better this time. Okay, so this is the template. I've just got the H1 here, and I'm going to do lose news. Except that I'm not going to do a straight apostrophe because they look ugly. I'm instead going to do my HTML entity. I'm going to do ampersand, a semicolon, and in between those it's a right symbol quote so that I've got the actual curly apostrophe. There it is. Okay, so I've got my H1 in there. Woohoo! Nothing special so far, right? But now we get to the fun stuff. So put a main. Oh my goodness, would you stop? One of these days I'm going to figure out how to get it to stop giving me these unwanted notifications about everything over and over and over again. One of these days I'll figure it out. Okay, so here's the main. And here is where I'm going to be looping through the articles. And I know already I'm going to need a class equals container on here. And why? Well, that's a skeleton thing. Did I already get the skeleton in here? I think I did. Yeah, there it is. So let me go ahead and just do inside the style here. I'm going to do @import, which is how you can import one CSS file into another. You can daisy chain CSS files. I've done that before, although it can take a performance hit after a while if you chain too many of them together. So let's see, import, and I think it's /source/ skeleton .css. If I got that wrong, the browser will let me know with the error. So that's what the class equals container is, and most of these front-end CSS libraries use container or something like it. I'm pretty sure Bootstrap does, although it's been years since I've used Bootstrap. But usually they'll have something like that that will just kind of will contain everything, right? Sometimes it's called wrapper, sometimes it's called page, but usually it's called container. So here we go. I'm going to do article, and actually let me go ahead and just do opener and closer. And then to get the loop in here, it's v4, as you might recall. So v4 equals, and then whenever you've prefaced something with like a v dash, that means this is a special attribute that's unique to Vue, and it will know. Like I don't have to use like the handlebars type. I don't have to use a colon in front of this. I don't have to do any of that stuff. It already knows that okay, I'm going to be looking for something inside this data that has been returned. Right? That's the stuff that's been made available not only to the mounted section and methods, but also down here in the template. So I can do, let's see, articles. Yes, that's what I've been returning. So I will do article in articles. I've told you before that I don't really like this. I wish they'd used of. And in fact, they do allow you to do of, but it's not like how it's done. So I don't know. It makes me twitch a little bit because it's really a for loop what they're doing. But that's okay. And let's go ahead and just grab an H4 here or something like that, H3, H5, anything like that. And I will do some simple data binding here. So this is the handlebars or mustache that I was talking about before. This is how you do the data binding, and this is not unique to Vue. There are definitely other frameworks that use this same kind of templating system. And this is data binding, so I can grab anything that's been returned from that data object, and I will do article.title. I remember there's a title in there, and let's just go ahead and test it. So if I go back over here to ye browser and refresh, then it doesn't like it. So now's the time to figure out what's going on. So article v4 article title query equals sports. Hmm. Let's see. This is articles. Let's see. Why isn't this working here? Let me look at my notes here before I log on. Yeah, it's working. I will give you guys extra credit if you see what the problem is before I catch it. Okay, so I didn't finish my fetch call here. That's why. I need to actually finish the rest of this this structure here. I did a fetch call, so it is grabbing the data, and I was kind of fooled by the fact that we looked in the console and it wasn't returning an error or anything, but we haven't actually done anything with this yet. I just kind of finished this and thought, okay, we're good. So we're not. Let's go ahead and finish this out. So this is going to be, as you recall, a then, and then pass a variable into that callback. And then we have to do a response.json. So it just tells the interpreter that, yes, this is JSON data. Please interpret it as such and turn it into a JavaScript object, basically. Response.json.then, and then data is a variable that's being thrown into another callback. And here's where we can do this.articles equals data.articles. And this was, I'm not going to like spit this out to the console again. We did that before. So I just know that the data is arranged in an articles array. So if I set this.articles equals data.articles, then this.articles here is going to contain that same array. So let's go ahead and try that now. There we go. That's looking better. Very easy to forget. You do a certain piece of logic and then think, oh, I'm done. And actually, you haven't even done the important stuff yet. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to do a couple more pieces of data binding. So we've got the H4 with the title. I'm going to do a P element with, again, the handlebars and article dot description. Test it. There we go. And one more. And what I did before on Friday, I actually put an anchor element in here and did an href attribute and did that whole thing. I'm not going to do that this time because that's going to be one of the methods that I put in on the demo tomorrow. I want to make the whole card clickable, not just this little link down here. People don't like aiming for little links. They want the whole thing to be clickable. So that's what I'm going to do. Instead, I'm just going to put in, let's see, this is an ellipsis, the 3 dots. And then the from is like where the article comes from. So that was article.source.name, I think it was. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, this is from Wired again, from Google News, etc. So yeah, things are starting to look good. So let's go ahead and get that image in there. So as you guys know, I think I like putting the image before the text content that is related to it, because you never know when you're going to want to float an image left or right using CSS. And that is just putting the image off to the left or right and having the text wrap around it. Super easy to do if the image is in front of the text that you want to be wrapping around it. Not so easy to do if it's at the end of that. Doable, but not easy. So I just make it a habit of just putting the image in here. So image, as you guys know, it needs a source attribute and it needs an alt attribute. But in this case, we're going to be pulling the source and the alt from the articles here. So this is a different kind of binding. So this is data binding. Here we're using the double handlebars, but attribute binding is when you want to use this article properties inside attribute values. Then instead of using the double curly braces, you put a colon in front of the attribute name. So I'm doing that for both of these here. So source equals and image dot and I think it's URL to image, like so. And let's see if that works. And no, it does not like it. Equals not image URL to image, it's article dot URL to image. And it still doesn't like it. Why not? I must have this wrong here. Hang on. URL to image. It's pointing right at it, and it's not making any sense to me why it's not working. Let's see, source equals. All right, once again, I will give extra credit to anyone who catches this before I do. Let me just go ahead and finish this in here. Oh, is that all it was? Oh, look at that. See, Vue is, I mean, they make a big deal about being unopinionated, and generally they are, but this is a classic case of being opinionated. Like this, I didn't have the alt tag in there, so the whole image broke, which I get, right? It doesn't validate if you don't have an alt tag in there, and I fully support that. Nevertheless, it's like not telling me that that's what the issue was. So there's a good lesson. So make sure you get the alt tag in, and then it'll work. I've noticed other things about it being opinionated, like if I don't have like a closing tag here or something like that, then it breaks the whole page, and it doesn't necessarily tell me what. I mean, luckily, I know HTML, so I can see easily, oh yeah, there's a missing paragraph tag there. But yeah, so it is opinionated about things like that. So if you're getting an error message and you don't know what it means or whatever, check the HTML and make sure you're following all the rules there, because it might be flipping out about whatever. Okay, so we've got that. Cool. And so here is what I was hoping we would run into, where you see where there's some missing images there, which means that some of these articles are being delivered without an associated image with them. And that's only to be expected, right? Not every news article is going to have an image associated with it. A lot of them do. That's a pretty car. But a lot of them do not. And so this is a great place for a VIF. So if you might recall that we did that before in order to put a conditional right here in our template. So on the image, for instance, if I do VIF equals, whatever I put into the condition here resolves true, then it will show this image element, and if it resolves false, then it will not. So I'm just going to say VIF article.url to image. And if the article.url to image exists, then okay, it'll display the whole image element, and if it doesn't exist, then it's not even going to include this element in the template. So VIF equals, and this is just like V4, right? It's got the V dash, so you don't have to put the colon or the handlebars or anything like that. Article.url to image. So if article.url to image, then do the image. Now if I save it over here and refresh, then the articles that have an image have them, and the other those that do not just don't show one. That's all. So this is starting to make, this is a really messy page. Like, I would not want to have to fight my way through this and figure out like what Google News is for what, Wired is for what. I don't even understand what's going on. So this is what I mean by at some point you're going to run into a place where you need to put in some CSS, or else your interface just won't make any sense, right? like this is happening here. So let's see, the only thing I've done so far is I've got the skeleton.css imported in and making use of the class equals container. And let me just get a few rules in here, not much, just a bit. To start with, I told you guys about branding colors. Like, yeah, you want to get some branding colors in there. So I'm just going to get one. And I think I'll get it from News API itself. So I'll go to newsapi.org here. And these do look like bootstrap colors. This blue looks like a bootstrap color. Let me do a right click and inspect and check it out. No, that doesn't look like bootstrap, but it's some, when you see like a class like this, it's very declarative and it's descriptive, right? It's what's the word for it? It's semantic, right? It tells you something about what it's supposed to look like. It's blue with white text over it. But yeah, that's certainly some kind of not certainly, but probably some kind of CSS library that's being called in. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It might be Foundation, maybe. I don't know. Have to see. Anyway, you can just ignore that stuff and go down here where it shows the computed styles. And let's see, find it. There it is, background, and there's my color. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to copy it. And let's try getting that in here. So I will do, what do I need? I need the header and main. I've tried putting styles on template, and I haven't been able to get it to work. I imagine the template element probably just disappears. I've tried putting styles on the body element, and I've had trouble with that as well. I think it's easier just to go ahead and grab the elements that are inside of template and start styling those. So I'll do like a header, comma, main. So it's a compound selector that selects both header and main with the comma operator. And let's just do color and then number, and then there's what I copied. And actually, I did not name the dollar. It's already there. Unlike JavaScript, forgetting CSS semicolons can break things very quickly. So let's just check what that looks like. And, you know, everything looks clickable, which is not good right off the bat. But like I said, eventually I'm going to make all these cards clickable. So maybe it's okay. I'll leave it in there for now. I can always change it later on. But at least I've got something. Now, one thing that I can see right off the bat is that these images are looking too big, and something is really pushing. You see how this is happening? I bet this is a really big image down there somewhere. I'm going to scroll over to the right here and then scroll down and see. Yeah, so some of these images from these articles are huge, right? And I have no way of knowing on this endpoint, like, what size images are going to be delivered to me. I have no way. And News API obviously isn't bothering to work with those either. They're just delivering the data right from, you know, whatever. So I will do, see, .container image. And this is one you might recall from Web Technologies, which is one of your biggest and easiest tools for responsive design. Doing an image and then just do like a max width, 100%. So it should not spill out of the sides any longer. And now, even this big image here is being collected inside of here. Now, in a real app situation, if this were being delivered to the public and we expected to see any kind of real traffic, then it wouldn't be acceptable to have this huge, huge image. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? People would have to sit there and wait for it to download. And so there would probably be some processing going on in the back end. I'd probably grab these images on the back end somehow and then run a script in order to resize them on the back end so I can deliver them to users in a smaller, more easily consumable format. But for now, I mean, that's beyond the scope of this class, obviously. So it's already looking much better. I still need to separate these articles from each other, especially when you get down into like this kind of stuff where you don't have the image to make it sort of clear where an article begins. Like this is all just way too messy in here. So let's grab .container article, and I'll start by giving it a border. And I've just got some of these guys memorized. These are just different grays. If you need to know like other color names that you can use, just look up CSS color names or HTML color names, and you'll find a big table on like W3 Schools or something like that that'll give you a bunch of these. Or you could just use the hexadecimal values like this guy right here. Okay, so we've got these split up, and let's get the margin around them too. So there's the border. Margin, I just need margin top and bottom. So I'll do like 1em and 0. You might recall that when you have two values on a margin, or padding for that matter, then the first one is top and bottom, and then the next one is left and right. So that pushes them away from each other a little bit, like so. Maybe I'll do a border radius of half an em. Em is just the size of the type. I don't know if you guys recall that from CSS, but yeah, like 1em is just whatever is the size of the type that's being used at the moment. So usually that's going to be 16 pixels for starters. So I just did a border radius. I don't know how well you can see it over the share, but there's some rounded borders down here. And the image is preventing the border from rounding up here, which is fine. I just wanted it on the bottom. And then let's see, do border. No, let's see. Some of the text is getting a bit close to the edge here. So I'm thinking about pushing the text in from the walls a little bit. So I'll do container, what is it we use? An H4, and then container P. So there's that comma operator again. So this is a compound selector saying grab the H4 that's inside container and also the paragraph that's inside container. And I'll do the padding, and this time we want padding left and right, but not top and bottom. So I'll do 0 for top and bottom, and just do 1em left and right. And there we go. It's pushing in from the walls a little bit. It's starting to look a little bit better. So I'm not wild about it. I'd probably use like the size of the H4 is a lot larger than I would have expected. That's probably something that Skeleton is doing to me. So maybe I'll do container H4 and just try to get the type size down a little bit. Let's see, I will do like a font size of 0.9em. Yeah, and it's taking it down to a 0.9em of the actual paragraph size, so to go a little bit larger with it. Or you could just put in a pixel amount if you want to. Let's try 1.8em, twice of what I had there. So yeah, something like that. I need some padding up top here, various other things that I need to do. For that matter, instead of doing, well, no, I don't want to put, I was thinking, oh, I'll just put padding on the article itself, but that's actually going to push the image down from the top, which I don't really want. So this is the sort of thing that you want to get going. I won't take it any further, take up more of your time. It's already 7 o'clock. But this is the idea. And if you do something like this, then we'll take it a little bit further than this, right? Because it's not very good right now. But not much further than this, right? You're letting the scaffolding and the skeleton.css do most of your work for you. And all you're doing is adding a bit of CSS to try to turn this into something like a readable interface. And I'm going to stop it here because I'm going to leave the methods for another day. It's actually not going to be a super long demo. I don't think it'll be a big problem to implement it. But I do want to break it up a little bit because we still have to do the final exam review tonight. Okay, so I think that is it for right now. So this is about where you want to be. Actually, a little bit further than where you want to be for today because we implemented some of the CSS, which we hadn't really talked about before. But accepting the CSS, like this stuff here, this is about where you want to be today. So if you're not here yet, then that's what you want to be spending tonight's lab working on. So after we review for the final exam, I'm going to call you guys one at a time and get you to show me your code. And, if it's just right at the beginning, okay, fine, that's where you're at. But then we can talk about where to go from there. And at the very least, I know you can show me that you have an app.view file because it only takes about 2 minutes to create the scaffolding for the project and then open up the app.view file. I mean, that's like nothing. And then getting in the stuff that you need in here. Okay, did I already ask if you guys had questions? Well, if not, I'm asking now. Any questions about anything that we just did? Oh, I remember what I was going to do. We were going to take a look at the style scope. I want to check this out in the browser real quick, just before we go. I'm going to look at the elements here, and I want to see, okay, so check it out. Div ID equals app, it created for me, and then data v app. And then, so check this out. So data v, and then it's got this weird number here. And then if I look down in the loop, like all of the articles have the same data v number here as well. So this is not a problem. It's fine. It's not going to break anything. But if you're someone who looks at your code a lot or looks at the console a lot, the DOM rather, and if this bugs you, then in something like this, like I was saying, you don't actually need the scope in here because we're only working with a single document. So there's nothing to scope, really. But if I do that and then save and go back over here, see, all those weird classes just go away. What those are that's how Vue does the scoping. Basically, it throws on these attributes and then makes sure that the classes that you, or the CSS rules that you created only apply to those selectors, and that's it. So that's all. If you look at your DOM and you're noticing some weird stuff happening with those, that's what it's about. If you remove the scoped attribute from the style, then you'll get rid of them. But again, it doesn't really matter one way or the other for our purposes. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.